Hello, welcome to another episode of the Peaceful Solution Character Education Teacher Certification Program. Thanks for coming tonight. If if you've got your books, please turn to LP4A. Oh, excuse me. Let's finish up here. I think last time we had class, we were on page 75, and we had a little bit of finishing up to do there. So if you've got your books, please turn to page 75. Now, this is going over the last chapter, and it's what I have learned. And this is being a VIP. The making of a VIP, and we left off on the third statement from the bottom of the page. It is, I can make the right choice and choose other means of entertainment that will not depict violence and aggression as a means of solving a problem. And that's on, if you'll turn to page 64 for a moment. And actually, in this entire chapter, it talks about these things. It's just particularly on this page, the title of it is Violence is No Fun in Games. And it's actually talking about, in the entertainment, seeing the violence and so forth. If you look at the very first sentence there, it says, violence on television, in the movies and in video games can affect your character in many ways. Many studies prove that as a result of seeing violent shows where aggression is high, teenagers just like you become desensitized to the horror of violence, aggression, and the suffering of others. And I might add, not just teenagers, but all ages, young and old alike. So seeing these violent acts over and over again do have an effect on you, even though you might not realize it at the time. I thought this one thing was very interesting down at the bottom, the last sentence or so. It says, reports also show that playing video games can actually slow brain development. Get that? Reports show that playing video games can actually slow brain development. Now, how do you think violent acts that you see on television, the movies, and video games affect your character? Think about it. Now, let's go ahead and look at the next statement. It says, I can obtain a positive character by always considering what my values are and by imitating and practicing. Notice the VIP there. My values, V, are and by imitating, I, and practicing, P. Only those things that will not cause harm to others and myself. We can turn to page 73 and just briefly go over that. The steps to a moral character. Now, this is what the VIP is all about. There's 3 steps towards obtaining this moral character. And these steps, when perfected, can make you a very important person, VIP. It's very important to remember the value. You first have to see the value in something. And as we know, different people value different things. Some people might value a coat in the wintertime, whether it be new or old. Somebody might value having a pair of shoes with no holes in them, regardless if they're name brand high cost shoes or not, you know. Everyone has their own set of values, but what's important, well, let's read that. V, value. Consider what is important in your life. How can influences affect what you value and how you achieve your values? How can influences, now remember that, the influences, because it talks about influences throughout the Peaceful Solution. Now, imitate. Beware of what and who you imitate. Imitating negative behaviors and negative people who act immorally means you're adopting negative character traits. And I believe the last teacher spoke about this when he was mentioning when they would watch a karate movie or something, everybody would come out of the theater, you know, doing the karate moves and all that stuff. So it shows how they were influenced by that. like an immediate influence. If you go on down, well, let's look at the last sentence there. It says, on the other hand, well, go up a little bit further. If you begin to imitate this character by retaliating when someone wrongs you, then you are imitating negative behaviors that will develop into negative character traits. Now, you also have to be careful about thinking of it, whether you actually do the physical action or not. If you're thinking about retaliating against somebody and actually playing it in your mind, we'll talk further about that in a minute. But on the other hand, consider the person of moral potential that you can become if you pick out all the positive moral traits and imitate them. Because everybody has some moral character traits, and some have a lot of immoral character traits, and we have some still that we're trying to get out of our lives. Let's look at P for practice. Make moral choices and practice beneficial behaviors that will build your character. Consistently practicing a right behavior makes it a habit, and it becomes a part of your character. I want to read that again because this is going to be addressed a little bit as we move into the next chapter. In keeping what you have, keeping the moral fiber and the moral character that you've built, that you've worked hard to build, keeping that and guarding it. And I'll mention this for a moment, but the subconscious mind, you have to be extremely careful what you let in there. So consistently practicing a right behavior makes it a habit, and it becomes a part of your character. For example, by practicing being honest, you'll become known as an honest person whom others can trust. Because if you practice being honest, it will become a habit. It'll be part of you. You'll just do it. That's an amazing thing when you put something into practice. It's really interesting when something like that becomes a habit. Let's look at the last one. By practicing my VIPs, I too can become a positive role models for others. See, we talked about role models. We talked about the role models and how some people hold sports figures up to be a role model, or how political figures or so forth. And in one of the reports, I believe there were a lot of people that actually chose their mom and dad, their parents, as a positive role model, and actually said, that is my role model. So we need to be careful, though, because I know, and you know when you think about it, was everything that our parents did, was everything completely right? Did they know this Peaceful Solution Character Education program? Did they know how to show true respect? Did they know what it really meant to be honest and not to steal? The answer is no. They didn't have this, but they did the best they could. And, almost all of us probably heard from a parent, hey, you're not supposed to steal. And this is pretty much as far as it went until you got caught stealing, and then you were in trouble, right? So, anyway, by practicing you being the VIP that you can be, you too can become a positive role models for others. And we talked about that a couple classes ago too, on how you need to think about things. Think about who might be looking at you. Think about who might be looking to you as being a positive role model, watching what you do, how you conduct yourself, how you talk to others, If they see you getting upset, how do you handle it? And so we have to keep in mind, you're being watched. That should help you a lot in remembering to practice your VIPs. Okay, let's move on. Let's go ahead and turn over to LP4A. Now this next chapter is chapter 4, and the title of it is Now That I Have It, How Do I Keep It? Just let me say, this is not an easy thing. It doesn't just, you don't just learn this book and then say, okay, I got it now, I'm ready. It doesn't work that way. You have to continually practice all the things that you've learned. And that's why we now are going into this section that says, now that I have it, how do I keep it? Because it's very easy to lose also. It's a fragile thing. Nobody can take it away from you, but you can give it away. So this is, again, a note to the teacher right here, which we're training to be teachers, and so we're actually on the looking at the lesson plan, and this note is strictly for the teacher. So this chapter explores that it is not just about acquiring the things we want. So you've got the things you want. You wanted this, you wanted that, you wanted a car, or something tangible you can hold in your hand, or something, a watch, or for some of you young men, a new flashlight or something. So you got what you want, but now you must also care for, guard, and protect the possessions that you treasure. Now I used that as an example. That should not be the most important thing in your life by any means, but we all have physical possessions that we value, right? So we need to learn to care for, guard, and protect the possessions that we treasure. And well, in this way, we will retain their value and keep them functioning properly. Retain their value and keep them functioning properly. So herein lies the art of maintenance. This is it right here. It says the art of maintenance. So it is something that takes some effort. Not everybody maintains the things that they have and the things that they even value. Not everyone really knows how to maintain some of those things. I know there are people that value having a car. I deal with cars quite a bit. And I know there's people that value having a car available so they can go here and there and do the things they need to do. But some people don't even really know how to take care of that car. Possibly never even put forth any effort to learn how to take care of that car. You put the key in, make sure it's got gas in it, put the key in, and you drive. Tire goes flat, now what do you do? Okay? Engine starts knocking, now what do you do? Well, it's what you should have done prior to that time that could help keep you from those moments of excitement and despair and so forth. So that's just an example for you. But so how many things do we maintain on a daily basis? Let's think about it. Many people in this room have homes. Whether it be an apartment or a house, a mobile home, what have you, they have what is their home. So it's up to us to take care of that home. It's a physical thing. And whether it belongs to us or not, whether we're renting or we own it or whatever the case might be, it's up to us to care for that. If something's wrong with it, we need to look at it and try to get it fixed, or try to get someone to come by and fix it, whatever the case may be, in the proper manner. If we have a car, it's the same thing. It's a valuable possession. I mean, cars nowadays cost a lot of money. And even if you have one on the lower end of the scale, on the amount of money that you spent, it still takes maintenance to keep that car going. Just as if you had a brand new car, you would need to take care of that car too. Some people buy a brand new car and think, okay, my problems are over now. Not so. You have to take care of that car also. You have to buy tires for it. You have to change the oil. You have to occasionally, rinse some of the dirt off the windshield or something, You've got to care for it. Get the trash out of the inside. So, these things. But now, what about those intangible things? Now intangible is something that you can't really, you can't really hold it in your hand there. You can't really see it like it's in a box sitting on the shelf or something. That it's intangible. Intangible things like character, for example. And this is what we're talking about. This is what this whole thing is about, is character, and how we should value that character and guard and protect and maintain it. So how often do we consider that our integrity must be cared for, guarded, and kept in proper working condition? Well, how often do we? Excuse me. Think about it for just a moment. So here we are right now, and it's easy to remember this and think about it. Oh yeah, I got to guard and protect it. This is what I need to do, and oh yeah, But now, what about when we're out there at work, interacting with people on a daily basis, and we've had a pretty strong week here recently with the ice and snow and all, and a lot of people were able to see where they might need to make a little bit of improvement, not only in their physical preparedness, but also in their character, in preparing for something like that might take place again in the future, in being prepared for the hardships, being prepared for not getting the answer that you might want, for the things that you desire. I know a lot of people, all over the nation, where especially here in Texas, where, they didn't have water, they didn't have electricity, they didn't have gas to drive in their car. Some people could have gotten in their car and driven to, who knows, Louisiana or one of the northern states or California or somewhere, to get out of it. But not everyone had that capability. Some people decided to fly off to different places to get away from it. But we don't all have that capability of doing that thing. And even though you might desire to do that, if you're not prepared for it, you can't just scream out and demand it from somebody. You have to know how to properly conduct yourself in all these situations. So again, like character, like caring for this intangible thing called character, how often do we consider that our integrity must be cared for, guarded, and kept in working condition? Did we think about that while we were suffering? Did we think about that when it was cold? Did we think about that when it was freezing outside and we had no water, or possibly the heat might even been getting a little low? So in this chapter, students will learn, and this is talking to the teacher, letting the teacher know that this is what we're trying to get across to the student. We want to make sure that we make some impact as a teacher. It's not just about words. Yes, words do go into the mind, and people can, there's many people that have been known to be able to memorize pages and pages of things, exactly as it says. But that's just a rote type memorization. Putting it to work in your life is a little bit different than that. You've got to learn what it says, but you also have to learn what it says. Learn what it says to do. You got to hear. You have to listen. And you have to be willing to put this into effect in your life and into practice. So in this chapter, the students will learn that their character, that intangible thing called character. Now you can see the results of character, don't get me wrong. You can't see character sitting in a box. But you can see the results of character, whether positive or negative. You can see the results of someone showing respect to somebody. You can see the results of somebody showing disrespect to somebody. You can see the results of somebody practicing self-control or not. Right? So, this character, they'll learn that it's one of their most important possessions, and just like any other possession, it must be maintained through, and this is the way you maintain the character. You don't have to change the oil in it. You don't have to change the air filter. Here's how you do it. Right here. Here's the tools and the parts you're going to use to maintain that character. It's called self-control, consistency, discipline. Self-control, controlling yourself, stopping and thinking about things before you do them, and then making the right choice, not just blowing it off and saying, I'm going to go ahead and do this anyway. And along the way, you probably will do that some, when you're learning how to practice. Remember, practice. Practice becomes habit. You put this to work in your life and you practice. If you practice being in self-control, you'll be using self-control. Just like it said on a previous page, if you practice being honest, you'll become known as a person of honesty. So consistency, doing it all the time. You don't let up, no matter how hard it gets. And it does get hard. I mean, many times you'll just want to throw it to the wind, possibly, you know, and say, well, you know, it's not going to hurt this time. But consistency, you have to do it all the time. And only through that, well, I'm jumping ahead of myself a little bit, but consistency and discipline. The discipline is being able to say, no, I'm going to do this the right way. No, I'm not going to give in to some selfish desire that I feel like doing, just, you know, and throwing my self-control to the wind, or throwing my honesty to the wind, you know, lying about this and deceiving somebody about something that you know, could be very important in their life. So this chapter will prepare students for situations that could test their resolve to make these positive decisions. Man, now is that great or what? This chapter is going to prepare us for that, to show us how to go through these tests, you know, to make the right decision no matter what's going on in our life. So right there, I want to stop just a minute and say something about this, because just like the practicing, you know, when you're practicing self-control, when you're practicing respect, when you're doing these things, it's going into your subconscious mind. You're putting this to work in your life. I've even heard, well, it's been proven actually, that you could play, you know, a certain, well, for instance, I know there are some programs out there that actually teach a foreign language by letting it play at a low level so it doesn't bother you during your sleep, and it goes into your subconscious mind. It doesn't wake you, so you're not using your conscious mind. It's your subconscious that's being used. And if you think about it, time passes very quickly when you're using your subconscious mind. You know, you go to sleep, you don't have to think about breathing, you don't have to think about, you know, don't really even have to think about turning over or something to be a little more comfortable, something like that. Your subconscious mind is at work. And so it's running things, and it goes by very quickly. You know, you go to sleep, next thing you know, you're waking up. No time at all, right? So it's an interesting thing that this subconscious mind, and the conscious mind actually distracts the subconscious mind. The thing about the subconscious is it doesn't know real from fake. And so when you're practicing something, you might even feel at the very start like, well, you know, I'm just learning this. I don't know. I'm learning a little bit about self-control, and I see this right here, and I see what it's telling me to do, and I'm practicing it, you know. But you might not think that you're really a person of self-control. But if you practice that self-control, guess what? Your subconscious knows it. Your subconscious knows what's going on. If you had these words on a disc or on the computer or something where you could listen to it, listen to the peaceful solution, listen to how to keep this character, that's great moral character that you're working on, if that were able to play at a low level during the night, it could go into your subconscious mind and then help you to practice doing these things. So, anyway, this chapter will prepare you for the situations that could test your resolve to make these positive decisions. And through realistic scenarios, which are in here, that mirror common everyday occurrences, students get an opportunity to practice responses and behaviors that will enable them to maintain their positive character. And remember, the peaceful solution it's an introduction. It's an introduction to bringing positive moral character to students all over the globe. It gets them on the right path, and they get started in practicing these things, and it becomes that habit. It becomes part of their life. Some of the other concepts that will be taught in this chapter are the development and maintenance of a positive character. The development and maintenance. We've been developing and we're learning how to maintain now. Remember that. That it's a choice that begins with controlling one's thoughts. So there we go again. It's a choice. So there's going to come the time that you'll have to choose between doing the right thing and the wrong thing. And it will come up. I mean, you'll think you're going along there really doing well, practicing, respecting everybody, just being the best at it. And all of a sudden, bam, here it comes. You'll get that opportunity to make a choice, okay? And that it is a choice that begins with controlling one's thoughts. Thoughts lead to feelings. Feelings lead to actions. And actions lead to, some results, whether it's positive or negative. And so it starts with the thoughts. That's why this subconscious-conscious mind connection is so very important. That's why all the things we've been learning to this point, saying, hey, don't watch these things, don't play these video games, don't do this, because those things are going into you. And then everything around you, whether you know it or not, is going into that subconscious mind, and it does have an effect on the thoughts that you have and the feelings that you have and the actions that you take. So it's very important to guard, where you're at, what you're doing, who's around you, all these things. All right, and also one of the other concepts that will be taught in this chapter are how having a positive self-concept can make one less susceptible to negative influences. How having a positive self-concept can make you less susceptible. It's a lesser possibility that these negative influences will affect you as much, because an influence is something that can affect the way that you think, feel, and act, just like we mentioned a moment ago. It doesn't have to be something that you know is even taking place. Again, like we said a moment ago. It can be something as subtle as, which we learned in a previous chapter, in fact, but something as subtle as a smell. Something as subtle as a color. Something as subtle as a word that you hear that brings back something, or a picture that you see. These are subtle things that take place around us, and if we're not guarding that, then these things could have an effect on our thought. Doesn't necessarily have to have that negative effect, but it could. And so what we'd like to do is constantly surround ourselves with positive character, with other people who are practicing learning how to conduct ourselves and learning how to maintain this valuable possession of a great moral character on a day-to-day basis. And remember, again, someone is watching. There's young men in this class here that are watching the older men, and there's older men in this class that are watching the younger men. So we see these things taking place, and we're looking and seeing, wow, that was a great act of great moral character. That was a great act of discipline or self-control or respect. And showing that to one another is the best way. So with that, it's been my great honor and privilege to be able to be here tonight with you. And I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to the next teacher, Katan.
Thank you, David. Evening, everyone. Please be seated if you're standing. Welcome, everyone, again, if you're watching from home or wherever you might be today, as we continue in our character education program, Peaceful Solution Teachers Certification Training Course. And David made some great points today as he started out here in regards to what we're getting into in this particular chapter. Now that I have it, how do I keep it? Because the main focus of this is the learning how to maintain, the maintaining of a positive character. I remember when I was in school, I had a few teachers, not all of them, but there was a few teachers that kind of did things this way to, I guess, encourage us and to help us to realize the importance or even the value in ourselves, or the ability to do more than we thought that we could. And they would tell us at the beginning of the year, I'm going to start you off with an A. Everybody in my class gets an A to begin with. Now it's going to be up to you to keep that A. It's going to be up to you to maintain that A. And not everybody starts off with a positive character, sadly. We're learning how to develop these things. But once we do start to learn this, once we do start to get the information, of course, this comes through education, through teachings, through influences, positive influences, of course, that come to teach an individual how to develop a positive character. Now comes the process of working to maintain it. Okay, like David said about cars, and there's many other examples that can be used: houses, clothing, shoes, work boots, tools. If you have tools that you work with, I think most of us have some type of tool that we need to work with on a daily basis. And if it has any type of moving or mechanical parts, there are certain things that you have to do to it. A car is very complex, and this is the example that's given in the Peaceful Solution. Especially nowadays, cars have computer systems and many moving parts, a lot more than they did when they first came out with the Model T and so forth. And if things aren't done to maintain those things and keep them in great working order, or to be able to retain the value of that car, later on, if a person goes to sell that car, they're not going to get what they want for it, because the value has decreased, because it hasn't been maintained very well. Okay, and it's so important when it comes to our character and the things that we're learning and that we're developing, that we can never let our character go. We can never cease maintaining or feeding. It's, like a car. If you want to drive a car for 1,000 miles, one of the things a car needs is fuel to go. Okay, so you've taken care of everything else. You put fresh oil in it, fresh transmission fluid, you've lubed the chassis, windshield washer fluids filled up. Not many cars that I know of can drive 1,000 miles on a tank of gas. But if you want to, you have to continue to put that fuel in it for the car to function. Well, it's much the same with our character. We have to continually feed our character with fuel that will enable us to continue to function and to remember, to recall the information that we've been taught in the Peaceful Solution, so that when a situation comes up or a scenario is presented, we're able to, or the student is able to, quickly draw off of that, because it's right there. Now, we don't ask the students to memorize every single word in the book. We just want them to know that there is a place. They need to know where they can go to gain this information. And then once they have it, then they have to start to practice it. And of course, maintaining, developing a habit. That's a word that usually is associated with bad habits. Great habits are used too, but when people think of habits, they sometimes, excuse me, they sometimes think of the bad habits that they want to change, the bad habits that they want to overcome. And I can think of several of my own that I like to overcome. And I think about that a lot when I'm speaking, when using certain filler words, and I try to catch myself, and it can be very difficult to do, but the more I practice it, the better it becomes to overcome that particular bad habit. Well, it's the same with the character here, and David made mention of, let's see here, some great points. I just wanted to go back here, and I wanted to read one point that he made on LP4A, on page LP4A. If you have your books, you can just flip back there in the second paragraph toward the middle there, where he said, this chapter will prepare students for situations that could test their resolve to make positive decisions. And I remember William said in the class, when he told the students, he didn't give them papers to test whether they remember the information that was presented in the lesson. He said, your test is going to be when you go out in the real world. Your test is going to be when somebody steps on your toe, when somebody shows you disrespect, right? When something doesn't go your way, how are you going to respond? Now you've got to draw off of this information that you've already received from the peaceful solution and then put it into practice, okay? Again, if we don't go over it and rehearse it and make it a habit, or something I like to say is second nature. You know, people say, oh, that's second nature to him, the way that guy climbs that rock wall, or, you know, the way he runs the race or whatever, or he goes in there and fixes this problem on a car. It's kind of second nature to him because he does it over and over and over again. And I think a lot of us have things that we can do in our life that we kind of really don't have to put much mental effort in it, because we've done it so much. It's become such a habit. It's become so much a part of us. It's almost like muscle memory. We want to get that way in regards to responding positively to any situation, in regards to making choices that will reflect the moral principles that we have been taught in the peaceful solution. We want that to become not necessarily our second nature, but our first nature. We want that to become the first response that we give when we encounter something. You know, in a perfect world, everybody's going to show respect to each other. No one's going to steal. Everybody's going to be responsible in their duties and so forth. But that's not where we are right now, right? And the real of it is that even in a group of people who are learning the peaceful solution, there are going to be different rates of growth between the different students. Some people might grasp something a little bit faster. Some people might have come from a background where respect was shown, whereas this other student, you know, disrespect was continuously shown in their family. So this has become something that they value getting what they want by showing disrespect. Okay, so it might take them a little more effort to grasp hold of that concept of respect or whatever might be being taught in that class, but it's each and every one of our responsibility to make sure that we're maintaining, again, like I said, the principles that are taught. And so here, this word resolve here that was read, this could test their resolve to make positive decision, means to decide firmly on a course of action. Okay, to decide firmly on a course of action. And like David said, it's not always going to be easy to make that choice, you know, to do the right thing when everybody else is doing the wrong thing. Remember what we covered at the very beginning of this? I believe it was it chapter or page 4? I want to say chapter. It's not. No, it wasn't. It was page 2. A road less traveled. You know, developing and maintaining a positive character in today's day and age, specifically or speaking, it is a road less traveled. Not many people are really focused on developing a positive character. You know, I was really kind of surprised, and I think it was more so because of how cold it was, that when we did go through this spell that we went through here down in Texas. If some of you might be watching from different parts of the world, I'm sure it's probably come across the news. We had a pretty deep Arctic cold spell here that reached all the way down to Texas and put a little bit of a strain on the electrical grid. And not only was it cold, the people didn't have power, they didn't have fuel, they didn't have heat, and so forth. Now, in other situations that we've seen in the past, like with Hurricane Katrina, you know, which would come under the classification of a natural disaster, you know, when people got put in those situations that, in this, you guess you can say, tested their resolve of the decisions they would make, a lot of people resorted to looting. You know, they resorted to stealing, they resorted to vandalism, they resorted to violence. You know, thankfully, we did not see that for the most part that I know of. I'm not saying that nothing took place, but we didn't see that taking place. And this covered a vast swath of areas in Texas and several other states, but we didn't see that taking place. I think due in part because it was probably too cold to go out and do that. but sometimes people kind of collectively think about making better choices when they're faced with the alternative, which in this case would have been freezing to death. But let's finish here on page LP4B. It says, as educators and parents, we constantly remind our children that they need to care for their belongings. Now we must impress upon them that they must also care for their character. This is something that a parent goes over and over and over and over and over and over with their children, especially when a parent works hard. Excuse me, a parent works hard and they save money, and there's things that you have to do to provide for your family. You have to provide them food and clothing and shelter, and sometimes if the opportunity arises and they do a great job in their chores and their responsibilities, they might get something a little bit extra. And that's something that is emphasized. It's emphasized to me when I was growing up, and I emphasize the same thing to my children. Take care of your belongings. If you take care of them, you'll have them for a very long time. Now, it doesn't matter if it's your shoes, if it's your pants, if it's a possession, a toy, or a bicycle or something that you have, or even a tool, a watch or a tape measure. Make sure you take care of it and use it properly. Well, we have to do the same thing with our character, and this is something that it wasn't impressed to me growing up. Again, we didn't have the Peaceful Solution character education when I was growing up. To have this being taught to me about maintaining my character. And for the most part, in today's society, the students aren't being taught those things right now, okay? So, like we've mentioned many times, you're teaching this to the students might be the very first time that they're hearing this information presented. But once they're enlightened, once their eyes are open to the endless possibilities of what they can become, once they have these tools and these resources, then they can see that the opportunities are unlimited. They can become a great positive leader in society. They can actually make the changes that they want to see take place in society. They can stop the cycle of violence or abuse that they might have experienced in their family, or just witnessed possibly a friend that they grew up with experiencing. But they first have to be presented with the information, given the tools, and then shown how to use them appropriately so that they can attain the desired results. It says, teach them the importance of vigilantly guarding their minds against the bombardment of influences that can threaten their ability to maintain their positive moral character. Okay, and that's the responsibility as educators and parents. And as educators, and what we're learning here in this teacher's certification course, it's up to us to impress in our students' minds, and impress in the teachers that we teach this minds that it's their responsibility. It's our responsibility to help the child to understand that their character is one of the most important and should be the most valuable possession that they have. It should be like a treasure to them. People will spend all their lives hunting for a particular treasure, right? They'll spend thousands or sometimes millions of dollars to chase down clues and so forth to find a map, but they'll neglect the very thing that's within inside of them, and that's their character. And so it's important that we impress upon this in the student's mind, so that they'll remember that that's going to be, once they have this, that's going to be the filter through which they see everything, right? That's going to be the lens, so to speak, through which they see everything, and they'll be able to more readily distinguish between positive and negative influences, positive and negative thoughts, positive and negative choices or options, and they'll have the desire, because that has to be created within the person over a period of time, right? People can do things because you instruct them to do it, right? Like David said, someone's always watching. You want a person to get to the point where they're doing things, where they're making right decisions because they know it's the right thing to do. They want to make the right choice. They don't care what everybody else is thinking about them because they make the right choice. They have the satisfaction and peace of mind of knowing they made a moral choice. And that takes a lot of effort. That takes a lot of work. Even as adults, we have to sometimes struggle with our own thoughts in doing the right thing. That's not necessarily, like doing something wrong or stealing something, but just being diligent, being responsible. Sometimes we'll go, I'll just do that later. Why put off till tomorrow what you can do now? right? Sometimes a few minutes of doing something can save you hours the next day. That's something I try to instill in my children. Prepare the night before and getting your things ready, so in the morning we don't have to run all over the house looking for everything that you don't have ready while we're trying to go and get in the vehicle and head out to school. So let's look at LP4C here. It says lesson plan. This is the lesson plan here. Now that I have it, excuse me, how do I keep it? And the purpose and objective here of this particular lesson is students will learn how to maintain a positive moral character. So everything that we've gotten up to this point in the first 3 chapters that we've covered has laid the foundation for the student to understand what a positive character is, the difference between a positive and negative character, the difference between character and personality. We've covered values, we've covered character and its effects within the family, how character is developed within the family because of the influences that are shown in the family, and then how we can develop that character through valuing these things first and foremost, imitating the characters that we see or the behaviors that we see in others, positive behaviors that we see in others, and then putting those things into practice. I was thinking, when we were younger and we were kind of irritated with somebody, possibly a sibling or a friend, somebody that was younger. Usually it was somebody that was younger, and sometimes people would do it to antagonize others. But they would do what was called copycatting. We go to our parents and say, "Mom, such and such is copycatting me," right? But they were seeing, and a lot of young children do it just because that's how they learn. I don't know any of you I've never stuck a book in front of my toddler and say, "Now go over this and this will teach you how to walk," right? Or after they were born, showing them the video of how to eat food or anything like that. Some of these things are instinctual, but other things children watch. They learn. They learn that if they want to get somewhere, because they see the adults doing it and they want to get there a little bit faster, they have to stand up and start moving those 2 sticks on the bottom of their torso, right? They learn if they want something, they point at their mouth, or they try to imitate the words because they haven't properly formed them yet, but they see these things and they imitate the behaviors. Now, those are just general things that children learn as they're growing up. Think about the things that they learn that was covered previously from what is seen on the televisions, on movies, on video games, listened to on the radio and so forth, on the internet. These are also behaviors that are imitated as well because Hollywood, the entertainment, the media, the movies, they promote these people, the stars, the basketball players and sports players and entertainers as role models, right? This is what your child should look up to. But sadly, a lot of those people, because they haven't been taught the peaceful solution, of course, they have a mixture of positive and negative behavior traits, but normally what you see on the news are usually the bad things because for some reason the media loves to report on things that make people look bad at times, not always, but at times. So anyway, here, they're going to learn this, the maintaining of a positive character, positive moral character, and of course these are some of the materials that are shown that that are available to the teacher that they'll be using in the class. And then we look at our procedure number 1 here. It says here, of course, we go through the review, and that's, of course, what David just covered there, the review of the previous chapter, the making of a VIP. And this is where the teacher would go back, because normally the teacher would end the class probably at the end of that particular chapter. So the next time they would have that class, and it depends on how it's set up. This could be something that's done several times a week, 3 times a week or 2 times a week. It could be done every day of the week, or it could be something that's done once a week. It depends on the available time and how often the teacher is able to fit this into their schedule. So with that, it might have been a week before since they last heard the last part of chapter 3 and what I have learned. So now, as we get into this new chapter, the teacher will go through and kind of refresh their memory, kind of tie the previous into the present. How can violence affect your character? And this is a question that you would ask the students. And of course, you want to take as many answers as time will permit, and make sure that you really accentuate the things that really hit the points home, and encourage the students, even if they might repeat kind of the same answer in a different way, but encourage them, because it shows that they're grasping the material, and it helps them to feel confident about what they're learning and their willingness to participate in the class, right? Because the more that they're given the opportunity to do something, the deeper that information will stick. When we put things into practice, like Dave was talking about the subconscious mind, right? But when we consciously do certain things, it's like a deeper impression of that action goes into our mind. You can tell me to go down this road and then make a right at the red barn, and then when you get to the second stop sign, go a half a mile and then make a left, and we're the yellow house on the hill, right? Now I've got to imagine that, right? And I've got to open up my GPS and hopefully make sure I don't get lost. But the very first time that I do that, now I've got it in my mind. And the next time I go there, I typically don't have to look at directions. I think they call that spatial memory or something like that, kind of like how you can walk through your house without a map, right? If you walk that path many times, you can go through your house in the middle of the night and you know where everything is. You know exactly how many steps you don't have to count it. You know exactly how many steps you have to take to get to the refrigerator to get a piece of cheesecake at night if you so desire. But the more we practice these things, the more we remember them. And so this gives the students, remember, it's about practice, valuing, and this is what we just covered here, imitating and putting these behaviors into practice every single opportunity that they get. Okay, that doesn't mean that they should run up and start a disrespectful confrontation with somebody only to give them the opportunity to show respect, right? I only did that so I can show you how I can practice respect. No, but plenty of opportunities will be presented to them where they have to show respect or responsibility, right? Or any of the other concepts that are presented to them. And then B here, letter B, the second question they will be asked is, what is meant by the acronym VIP as studied by the Peaceful Solution? Of course, we just covered that, but of course they would say value, imitate, practice. And some students might get one or two, and some might miss, get one of them, but, take as many as you can, and then just kind of briefly cover what each letter of that acronym represents, the word and what it represents. All right. In number 2 there, it says guide class discussion by asking students the following questions. What must you do to maintain a car in great working condition? And they'll give you, several different answers, changing the battery and refilling the gas and so on. And depending on the teacher, they might remind you to change the wiper headlight fluid. But you want to ask them, what different things that they could do to maintain the car, because that, for the most part, okay, in junior high, a lot of students are getting to that point next year, or at least possibly by their, I forget the ages, sophomore year or junior year, where they're going to be getting their driver's license. And so they're thinking about cars. So that's something, they do. They want to, help dad. The boys want to help dad with the car and so forth. And possibly if they have a learner's permit, they might get to drive occasionally. But not much thought goes into the maintaining that car. Just throw gas in it and stomp on the gas pedal, right? And everything just works. You just put the key in and turn it on and hit the pedal and the brake, and the car just goes wherever you point it. But there's a lot of things that go into maintaining that car to keep it in great working order. It's the same with our character, okay? We cannot neglect or take our character for granted. We have to continually feed it, like I said before, take care of it, guard it, protect it from negative influences. What would occur, letter B there, what would occur to the car if you only change the oil once or put gas in it once, right? My father-in-law, I remember him telling me about a time when he got a car in a long time ago. It was a Buick Roadmaster, and this guy brought his car, and he was an older gentleman, but he told me when he pulled the plug on that oil, nothing came out. The guy drove the car there, though, but he said after he got to working on it, it was not that it didn't have oil, it was just really thick and sludgy. And he said back then, he said, I had to flush the motor and they just ran kerosene through it occasionally and cycled it on and ran it and drained it and did that several times before he can get it. But he said he had to do a lot of work to get the inside of that motor clean because the guy just never changed the oil. Okay, and thankfully it didn't die on him. But I mean, this is what could occur with some of the vehicles if the oil is never changed or gas isn't put in it. Eventually, it will run out of fuel, and you'll be stranded on the side of the road. What would occur? Oh, I read that one. Number C there, or letter C. It says, what does it mean to maintain something? And of course, the definition that we give, after we take several answers from the students, maintain can be defined as to keep in a state of efficiency, to preserve from failure or decline. And that's one thing that we don't want to fail in the upholding of moral principles. Now in all reality, like David said, we will make mistakes sometimes. We very well might make bad choices sometimes. But it's up to us once we recognize where we went wrong to pick ourselves up and be determined, as we're going to cover here. We won't get into it tonight, possibly the next class, to set our mind in advance to make better choices the next time, to recognize where we made that bad choice or made that mistake and avoid that pitfall the next time it comes. Because I can guarantee you there is going to be a next time, whether it's an influence or whether it's a habit that we've developed over a long period of time. We're going to have to be faced with testing of our resolve to stick to a determined path. So for procedure 3 there, it says, tell students that maintaining a positive character is similar to maintaining a car. Just as we would check systems in a car to keep it in great working condition, we must regularly check our values, our feelings, and our actions so that we can maintain a positive character. Values, feelings, and actions. And values, as we covered so much from the beginning, so many times from the beginning here, they play a huge part, or as it's mentioned in the Peaceful Solution, an integral part in the formation of our character. Okay, and the things that we value have the ability to affect our character. So we want to make sure that our values, so we have to regularly check our values. Like when you turn on a key on a car, the first thing that computer does is it checks all the systems. Now it does it like that, right? Because it's a computer and it's designed to do that. And then after the key is on, the computer is still checking multiple systems in the car: emission, oil pressure, coolant temperature, intake air temperature, all these different things, to make sure that the car is operating in the parameters that it was designed to. Well, we have to continually system check ourselves to make sure that we're maintaining these positive values so that we don't slip into a situation where now we've become the cause of someone's bad day because we didn't practice self-control, or because we let go of the handle and just shouted at somebody, or neglected our responsibilities, whatever the case might be. And it says here, inform students that today they will learn practical ways to maintain a positive moral character. Have students turn to page 79, which is where we're going to start next class, in their handbook, and read the introduction. And the introduction is where we'll start next time. But before I leave you here, I want to leave you with this definition of the word systems. Now, the definition of the word system is a set of principles or procedures according to which something is done, an organized framework or method. It's also a group of interacting or interrelated entities that form a unified whole. Okay, so look at the moral principles that we're learning in the Peaceful Solution is a group of entities, so to speak, a group of information that forms a unified whole that, these principles, that will help us to govern our lives in an organized manner, in a peaceful manner, in effect, because that's the goal, to teach peace, to change the hearts and the minds, as the cover of each Peaceful Solution book has on it. But we're going to, for today, stop there on procedure 3, and the next teacher will pick up there and start on page 79. And our next class will be the 24th, this upcoming Wednesday, the 24th, at 5:30 Central Standard Time. Again, thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to meeting you next class.